Bran Stark sat at the very edge of the Godswood in Winterfell, staring at the ancient weirwood tree whose face had seen centuries come and go. The old carved visage gazed back at him with crimson-sapped tears, but these days Bran found himself less and less certain of what the heart tree perceived. Did it see him as a boy that once climbed the walls and dreamt of knighthood? Or did it sense the greenseer he had become? Less mortal, more memory than flesh. The wind rustled branches overhead, swirling the crisp northern air around him. He closed his eyes, and that stirring of wind became for a moment voices in his mind. Echoes of old kings, old friends, and the quiet hush of something deeper. An undercurrent that bound White Walkers, dragons, and children of the forest alike. Each day that passed, Bran felt that thrumming energy in the heart of the world. He wondered if the realm itself was a living creature, with magic as its blood, seeping up through roots, crackling along the edges of mortal hearts, and fueling everything from direwolves to dragonfire. He wondered if that blood was diseased somehow, contaminated by eons of strife, for he had seen how dragons burned cities and soared across kingdoms. He had seen how the White Walkers twisted corpses into a shambling horde, and inside himself he sensed the pattern, the relentless cycle of ice and fire repeating through history. He shifted on the wooden bench in the Godswood, the midday sun tilting shadows across the ground. The trunk of the weirwood loomed before him, its bark as pale as bone, its eyes always watching. If he tried, he could slip into the minds of ravens and glance across the world for glimpses of life. But he feared what he might see now. There were fewer illusions of safety in Westeros. Even after the War for the Dawn, victory felt tentative. The dead were supposedly vanquished, the Night King destroyed, Daenerys Targaryen and her dragons subdued, but the realm remained on a knife's edge. Magic was ever the key. Magic, he had learned, was not a mere trick or singular power. It was woven into everything in the world, threaded through the nature of Godswoods, the songs of the forest, the blood of Targaryens, and the living stories that once took shape as White Walkers. If it had a mind of its own, or some deep intention, it was beyond the grasp of men and women. It was something that chose its own vessels, the dragons that burst from petrified eggs, the children who dreamed of prophetic ravens, the awakened corpses that marched with ice-blue eyes. Magic had saved and damned them all in equal measure. He looked down at his legs, which he had not been able to feel for so long. Once that was his greatest sorrow. The boy who could not walk, who would never ride, who lost his future in a fall from a tower's ledge. But the child he once was felt immeasurably distant, like a half-forgotten dream. He touched the bark of the heart tree with cold fingers. Did he remain Bran Stark, or was he only the three-eyed raven, an embodiment of all that had come before, an accumulation of memories older than civilization itself? A raven cawed from a nearby branch, and it startled him from his reverie. It peered at him with black, beady eyes, as though beckoning him to follow. He glanced at it, half tempted to slip inside its mind and see the world from above the castle walls. But inside him was a swirl of conflict. He'd seen so much death. He'd seen how magic both gave life and took it mercilessly. The dragons were magnificent, yes, but they had reduced entire cities to rubble. The White Walkers were nightmarish, but they were also the final manifestation of a power older than the Night's Watch, older than the concept of the North itself. He thought of his siblings and their struggles. Sansa, ever the cunning leader, was inside the castle walls now, meeting with northern lords to strengthen alliances. Arya was off in distant lands, traveling in search of new beginnings, though he caught glimpses of her sometimes when he let his mind drift with the ravens. Jon Snow, his cousin, though forever a brother by bond, was somewhere on the borderlands, wrestling with his own purpose after having no taste for the Iron Throne or the South's politics. All of them had fought and sacrificed for the realm, but peace had never felt more fragile. Bran feared that the same tapestry of magic that tied them all together would invite a new disaster. Magic enabled wondrous things, yes, but also horrors. Ever since the long night was driven back, rumors abounded of new dragon eggs stirring in locked vaults, warmed by braziers in hidden corners of old Targaryen keeps. Whispers claimed cult-like devotees of the White Walkers lingered in the bitter far north, practicing unholy rites to resurrect the cold powers. It seemed to Bran that the cycle of ice and fire could begin again. If but a spark of magic turned, the world would tumble back into chaos. He swallowed, glancing at the weirwood face. Was there a way to break that cycle for good? A single possibility flickered in the far corners of his mind. A memory or suggestion from a time before men. The children of the forest once wove spells that shaped the very land. Spells so potent they changed rivers' courses and shattered entire land bridges. If he, as the three-eyed raven, could harness the last vestiges of that knowledge, perhaps he could do the unthinkable. Sever magic at its source, deny it life in the realm, end the possibility of raising new armies of the dead, end a reign of dragons that soared overhead with unstoppable fury. But the cost, his heart knew, would be tremendous. All those living creatures intertwined with magic, direwolves, Targaryens, the lingering children of the forest, might lose something essential or be lost themselves. To be rid of magic might cripple the land. Would the weirwoods themselves wither? Would the realm's sense of wonder vanish? He did not know. Yet the cost of letting it remain might be more war, more terror, and no final peace. It twisted him up inside. He was only beginning to understand. The ravens overhead cawed louder, and a shadow fell across the Godswood path. Sansa Stark, Lady of Winterfell, approached with careful steps. She'd taken to visiting him here often, though their conversations were not always warm. She wore a dark cloak of gray wool embroidered with direwolf sigils, and her copper hair was bound behind her shoulders. She looked more a queen than any southern queen he'd seen, with a dignity that seemed wrought from the north itself. "Bran," she said softly. "Still here?" "Always," he replied. He met her gaze and tried to summon that old familial connection. His voice sounded distant, even to his own ears. She gave him a measured look, then sank onto the bench beside him. She had learned long ago that addressing him as her brother had become complicated, that the power inside him had changed him. She still tried to treat him with kindness, but there was always a subtle distance. "We have lords in the Great Hall. They speak of petty matters, border disputes, shipping lines, harvest yields. But some are uneasy. The ghosts of the war still linger." She paused, folding her hands in her lap. "You already know all this, don't you?" He exhaled, letting the crisp air fill his lungs. "Yes," he said. "I know their concerns. I see them through the eyes of the ravens. I see their dreams at night. Fear is a stubborn thing." She nodded. "There's also talk of Daenerys, of her captivity." Sansa pressed her lips together. The Targaryen queen was not exactly a prisoner, but she was not free to roam wherever she wished. Jon Snow had once pleaded for her life, convinced that a Targaryen might still help protect the realm. But after the burning of King's Landing, trust was slow to rekindle. "And the dragons?" Bran asked. He'd followed them sometimes in his mind, ghost-like shapes that soared above cloud lines. Rhaegal had died. Viserion had died more than once, in a manner of speaking, reanimated by the Night King. Only Drogon remained, a living furnace of scale and breath. Rumor placed him somewhere in the east. A rumor, or perhaps more than that. "Some nights, the lords say they hear roars on the wind," she said, her tone flat. "I haven't heard anything, but each rumor pricks at old wounds. If the dragon returns, no one knows if it will come in peace, nor do we know Daenerys' true heart." Bran felt the tension in her words. The north was battered, not easily trusting. He let silence stretch between them. Then he turned his gaze to the heart tree again. "Sansa," he said softly, "would you want a world without magic, if it meant never living in fear of dragons, or of the dead rising again?" Her brow furrowed. "A world without magic? Isn't that a child's story? Magic is woven through everything we know, even in the old traditions here in the north." He nodded slowly. "That's what I've been thinking about." She stared at him more closely, as if suspecting some deeper meaning behind his words. "Without magic, would you still be able to see the future, or the past, or the entire realm? Would the weirwoods still whisper their ancient secrets? Dean? He did not answer right away. A crow hopped on the grass near his feet, pecking at a stray seed. No. I suspect the Greenseer's gift would vanish too. I would be, just me. Sansa's expression softened in a flash. Then you wouldn't do that, she said, as though comforting a frightened child. It would tear you from what you are. But Bran only turned his head away from her, letting her see the bleakness in his eyes. Have you thought about what might come in a decade, or in a century? Magic never truly dies. And that means the cycle of destruction may never end either. Nahendo. She didn't reply. Perhaps she had no answer. She gave a quiet sigh, then stood. We need you at the meeting if you're able. The Northern Lords wish to hear your counsel. She lingered a moment, then left him in the hush of the Godswood. He watched her go, and somewhere in the swaying branches, the old carved face seemed to watch as well. The leaves glimmered red like blood, like the deep knowledge that had shaped him. He placed a palm against the trunk, sensing the heart tree's connection to the vast web of the weirwoods. He felt time stretch out behind him, a tapestry of visions. He could see children dancing under moonlit boughs, forging pacts with the first men, weaving spells of concealment and transformation. All of it still sang in the wood, and he drew a breath that felt older than memory. In that breath, he saw the White Walkers once more, glimpses of them marching under swirling snow. He saw the dragons scorching deserts, turning green hills black with ash. He saw men kneeling, men fighting, men dying. The entire realm was like an ocean tide, ceaselessly crashing upon the shore. If he had the power, should he not use it to stop the next wave from drowning them all? A trickle of fear curdled his thoughts. Maybe the stories that magic told needed to continue. Maybe the realm would lose its soul if he shattered the source. But every memory of the horrors he'd witnessed, the dead rising in endless night, the roar of dragons scorching those who had no defense, pressed upon him. He yearned for a peace that wouldn't be undone by the next sorcerer king. The next hatching of dragon eggs, the next cold wind blowing from the land of always winter. He closed his eyes a moment longer, letting the crisp air wash over his face. Then he withdrew from the Godswood, feeling the old tree's eyes follow him. When he rolled through Winterfell's courtyard in his wheeled chair, the sun was creeping behind the battlements. The days were short in the north, and dusk arrived swiftly. Guards in thick furs and boiled leather stood at the gates, though they dipped their heads respectfully to him. Some still whispered about the boy who was Lord of Winterfell once, who became something more than human. He always felt their curiosity, their reverence, their fear. He proceeded into the great hall. A hush fell as soon as he appeared, the flicker of torches casting his shadow long across the stone floor. Sansa stood at the far end of a long table with several northern lords. A low murmur trailed off as he approached. He caught glances from Lord Glover, Lady Mormont's cousin. So many faces changed in the war. He saw the Stark banners overhead. It felt like an odd dream to be here at a council of living men and women, deciding the fate of the North, all while a deeper fate churned in his mind. Sansa addressed him with carefully even courtesy. Bran, thank you for coming. She gestured to a place at the table. One of the guards stepped forward to help him position his chair. My lady, he said softly, giving her the courtesy of her title. He let his eyes roam over the lords. They were talking about roads that needed repairing after the onslaught of whites during the war. They had concerns about harvest yields. But behind all that mundane talk, an undercurrent of worry thrummed. They all knew magic had wrought devastation. They had witnessed it firsthand. Perhaps they only wanted reassurance it would not return. He listened to them speak, offering quiet observations about the potential for trade, the replanting of farmland, the distribution of resources. His knowledge of the realm was extensive, gleaned from ravens and from the whispers of wind and wood. Even so, he spoke with a measured calm. He offered them glimpses of how distant holdfasts fared, how the roads near the Dreadfort needed clearing, how the port at White Harbor might soon welcome trading ships from the south. But as they spoke, he noticed the tension in the air. An older man, Lord Serwyn, coughed into his hand and finally said, "We appreciate your guidance, Lord Bran. But there's something else. We've heard rumors that a group of wildlings claim to see whites in the deep woods, and that the White Walkers might still stir. Is there any truth to these rumors?" All eyes fell on Bran. He saw them cling to the hope that the three-eyed raven would reassure them that the threat was gone. The war was over, was it not? The Night King fell. The army of the dead shattered. Bran took a careful breath. "I have not seen White Walkers on the march," he said honestly. "But the old magic that once birthed them still remains. Magic is like the changing of seasons, inevitable, recurring, unstoppable in cycles. If that power found new vessels, it could manifest again." A hush. Lord Glover's lips pinched. "Then we are not safe," he concluded in a grim tone. Sansa's posture stiffened. "We are safer now than we have been in a long time. The southern kingdoms are stabilizing. The north stands united. Jon monitors the edges of the gift and beyond. We can only do our best." "Eternity." Bran sensed the unspoken question. They had done everything, but it might not be enough. He saw the lines of fear etched in their faces, the way the memory of ice-blue eyes still haunted them. Perhaps they all suspected that only something more drastic could keep the next cataclysm at bay. He offered a small nod, trying to project a sense of calm, if not comfort. "The realm needs time to heal," he said. "Keep your people close. Reinforce your defenses. We must remain watchful, for magic does not simply vanish." "Namn." The final words left his mouth heavy with significance, and he saw Sansa look at him sharply. The lords exchanged glances, and conversation resumed in halting fragments. By the end of the gathering, they left with some relief gleaned from the three-eyed raven's watchful eyes, but they also carried his warning in their hearts. Sansa lingered after the lords departed, waiting by the table until it was only the two of them and a few guards. She dismissed the guards with a slight gesture, and they closed the heavy door behind them. She approached him, tension in every line of her posture. "You spoke of magic as though it might return to torment us," she said softly. "You told me in the Godswood that you've considered removing magic from the realm entirely. Is that truly possible?" He gazed at her. She was older now, more careworn. He remembered the carefree girl who once dreamt of golden nights and dancing with the Queen's court. That girl was gone forever, replaced by a pragmatic leader, shaped by betrayal, heartbreak, and survival. "I believe it might be," he said. "But it would require spells older than the Wall, older than the First Man. Such spells might tear the realm apart." Her brow furrowed. "How so?" He exhaled. "Magic is everywhere. It is in the weirwoods that sustain me, in the very bond between a warg and their beast, in the flaming swords the Lord of Light once blessed, in the dragon's flames. To remove it would be to sever something woven into nature. There could be repercussions, storms, earthquakes, floods of chaos before the world settles. Those who are touched by magic might lose their very essence. Perhaps the children of the forest would fade entirely. Perhaps the dragons, if any remain, would die. And I do not know what would become of me, or if the realm would ever be the same. Nay." She was silent for a long time. A torch flickered behind her, casting elongated shadows across the walls. "It sounds like a terrible risk," she said. "Could it be worse than letting magic remain?" He rested his hands on the arms of his chair, feeling the polished wood beneath his palms. "We have seen how quickly it can destroy. I have seen visions of futures where dragons multiply again, where a new Night King rises, unstoppable. Even if we stave off that terror in our time, it may return in another century. Magic is a cycle, weaving ice and fire into endless conflict." "Ninho." Her gaze dropped to the floor, and he noticed the trembling in her hands. "I won't pretend to understand the depths of your power, or what you see in your visions. But it frightens me. We have only begun to rebuild. People are not prepared for another war, or for more upheaval. Wouldn't it be easier simply to manage magic the way we manage every other threat?" "Nah." Bran allowed a faint, sad smile. "Easier perhaps, but not guaranteed. We cannot manage what we barely comprehend. The Targaryens tried to harness dragons. The Night's Watch tried to hold back the White Walkers. Both succeeded for a time. Yet each eventually fell to chaos. He looked at his sister, seeing the conflict warring in her eyes. She was Lady of Winterfell, sworn to protect the North, sworn to preserve her people's future. He was something both more and less than a Stark boy. Yet he, too, felt the weight of responsibility. He leaned forward slightly. "I haven't made a decision," he said. "But the thought troubles me. Perhaps this is what I was meant to do as the three-eyed raven. Maybe I was meant to break the cycle." She looked at him. "And if I asked you not to?" He swallowed. "I would consider your plea, but the final choice may not belong to just you or me alone. It may belong to the fate of the realm." She nodded slowly, her face somber. "Then we must speak again soon." She left him then, leaving him to the glow of torches in the near-empty hall. A strange hush descending. He rolled himself toward the warm hearth, letting the fire play on the stones. While he considered the shape of his destiny, did it truly have to come to this, the extinguishing of magic from the realm? He felt an ache inside him at the thought of losing the very thing that bound him to these visions, to the Weirwood network. He felt a pang of loneliness. Yet he also felt a growing certainty that the realm would never see lasting peace while the seeds of ice and fire continued to germinate in hidden corners. A white voice pulled him from his thoughts. Tyrion Lannister stepped from a shadowed alcove near the side. The dwarf wore a heavy fur cloak, having grown more accustomed to the north in recent months. Though he had never liked the cold, he offered a small nod of acknowledgement. "You speak of vanishing magic," Tyrion said, his voice hushed. "Quite a bold proposition." Bran regarded him curiously. "You heard?" Tyrion shrugged, approaching with that thoughtful look in his mismatched gaze. "I'm an excellent listener. Perhaps you've known I was here the whole time." Bran's lips curved slightly. Perhaps. In truth, he had glimpsed Tyrion's presence, but he had not minded. He trusted Tyrion more than most. The Lannister sighed and poured himself a small cup of ale from a jug left on the table. "I can't say I have any illusions about magic. We've all borne witness to what it can do, both wondrous and horrifying. But if you truly sever it, what might you lose? What might the world lose?" "I never knew." Bran let out a slow breath. "Legends, wonders. Perhaps even the uniqueness that sets this realm apart from places without magic. But we might gain peace. At least the peace of no more undead armies, no more unstoppable dragons." Tyrion sipped the ale, his eyes keen. "As someone who once admired dragons and the Targaryen legacy, it pains me to admit that maybe the world would be better off without them. But I can't help thinking of the countless songs and stories that would never come to be." Bran looked at him. "Stories matter, don't they?" "They do," Tyrion said softly. "They inspire, they warn, they shape us in ways we don't even realize. But so do the tragedies. Perhaps if we can avoid future tragedies, it's worth the cost. I cannot tell you yes or no. Only you can decide if the price is too high. But let me say one thing, Lord Bran. If you intend to do something as monumental as draining magic from the realm, you best weigh every consequence and every alternative." Bran listened, hearing the empathy in Tyrion's words. Yes, this was a choice that could break everything. He nodded, thanking him silently. Tyrion left him alone with his thoughts. That night, Bran drifted off to a restless sleep in his chambers. He dreamt he was wandering through the corridors of Winterfell, the walls shifting like illusions. At times, the stones were new, as if newly constructed by Bran, the builder, in ages past. At other times, the walls were blackened, burned, reminiscent of a future destroyed by dragonfire. Then the walls bled into the snows of the far north, and he found himself in the swirling gloom of a frozen wasteland. He glimpsed the silhouettes of White Walkers in the distance, silent as death, their ice-blue eyes piercing the darkness. He tried to move, but his legs would not respond. Something called to him from the heart of that icy wind. He turned, and a red comet streaked the sky. In the dream, he recognized the comet's presence as a sign of magic, a fiery brand against the night. He followed it, or it pulled him along, until the landscape changed again. Now he stood on the edges of a scorched desert, a single living dragon coiled on top of a blackened rock. The dragon's eyes glowed a burning gold, and it roared, sending flames into the sky. Bran felt the heat singe his face even through the dream. Fire and ice, swirling around him, each threatening to consume the world. He felt the tension in his chest, the inevitability of conflict, and a voice inside him whispered, "Break the wheel, break the wheel." When he woke, he was trembling, sweat chilling on his brow despite the cold night air. He heard the faint call of a raven outside his window, a solitary caw echoing through the courtyard. He breathed in, trying to steady himself, but the dream lingered. In the days that followed, Winterfell's routine continued. The lords departed to their own holds, carrying new instructions for roads, trade, and defenses. Sansa busied herself with the daily tasks of governance. Tyrion lingered in the north, apparently serving as an informal advisor, though no official titles bound him here. And every evening, Bran found himself in the Godswood, seeking counsel from the silent face of the weirwood tree. He ventured further into his Greenseer powers. He let his consciousness roam with ravens across the skies of Westeros. He glimpsed the mouth of the Trident, saw ships at anchor in King's Landing's harbor, soared above the burned ruins that still scarred portions of that city. He drifted west to Casterly Rock, where banners flew half-heartedly, the seat of the diminished Lannister power. He flew north beyond the Wall, searching, always searching, for any sign of the White Walkers. All he found was desolate ice, broken pines, howling winds. Yet something about that wasteland always made him uneasy, as if something lingered out of sight. He flew east, crossing the narrow sea in dreams, glimpsing Essos in its vastness, its deserts and mountains, its slaver cities that had once trembled before Daenerys Targaryen. He searched for any sign of Drogon. On occasion he found it, a distant shape in the sky, a black shadow that soared with majesty, trailing plumes of smoke when it dove. Drogon was still alive, still flying free. In one of these visions, the dragon perched on a rocky outcrop near a ruined city, roaring at some unseen threat. Was Daenerys near? Did the bond remain? Bran returned to his body each time with more questions than answers. Sometimes, he glimpsed the swirl of magic that clung to Drogon's wings, a raw, ancient power that refused to fade. That same power might be found in the White Walkers, if any still lurked in the far north. And it existed in him too, bound to the network of weirwoods. That trifecta, ice, fire, and green sight, formed the pillars of the realm's magic. A fortnight after the Council of the Northern Lords, Jon Snow returned to Winterfell. He arrived at dusk, weary from travel, with a small retinue of loyal companions. He came straight to Bran's chambers before even washing off the road dust. Bran watched as Jon entered, the lines on his face deeper than they used to be, hair streaked with a bit more gray near the temples. He still wore the all-black attire reminiscent of the Night's Watch. Though he had left the watch officially, he knelt by Bran's chair in greeting. "Bran," Jon said quietly, voice tinged with relief. "It's good to see you." Bran reached out and placed a hand on Jon's shoulder. For a moment, he tried to recall the closeness they once had as children, racing through Winterfell's courtyards. So much had changed. "And you," Bran replied. "You've been gone long." Jon nodded grimly. "I was patrolling the lands beyond the Wall, settling a few wildling disputes, making sure no pockets of whites still roamed. Saw no sign of the others, but the haunted forest feels unquiet." Bran's gaze sharpened. "In what way?" Jon sighed. "The wildlings are uneasy, say they hear whispers in the wind at night, that the land itself groans like something stirring in its sleep. Could be nothing, only old superstitions. But I remember how quiet it was before the Night King revealed himself. Even silence can be ominous." "Namnene?" Bran felt a prickle at the back of his neck. "I've looked, but I see no new White Walkers yet." Jon stood, pacing the chamber. "We all want to believe it's truly over, but some part of me thinks the threat might never be gone until the magic that birthed them is extinguished." He paused, then gave Bran a searching look. "Is that possible?" Bran's heart hammered at hearing the question from Jon's lips. "It might be," he whispered. "But the price is high." Jon nodded. evidently unsurprised. "Everything has a price. I learned that a long time ago." He stared at the flames and the small hearth. "If you think it's the only way to ensure there's never another long night, perhaps it's worth considering." Bran wanted to ask if Jon's experiences with Daenerys dragons had shaped his thoughts. Jon had once marveled at their majesty, but also witnessed the devastation they could unleash. Perhaps he now believed that even dragons, for all their power, were too dangerous to remain in the world. They spoke late into the night, Jon telling him of the settlements near the wall, how Tormund Giantsbane and other free folk were forging a fragile peace with the north. They spoke of Arya, who had left a missive for Jon in White Harbor, but continued wandering distant seas. They spoke of Sansa's leadership. Through it all, the question of magic hovered between them, unspoken yet present. Winterfell's routines continued over the next few weeks, but an undercurrent of tension settled over them. The winter snows began to drift more heavily, layering the courtyard. Torches burned bright to ward off the early dusk. Bran spent more hours in the Godswood, lost in communion with the weirwood. He found himself searching for ancient spells in the memories of the trees, glimpses of how the children of the forest once shaped the land. He saw flashes of them raising the hammer of the waters to break the land bridge, known as the Neck. He saw them forging words of protection in the far north, words that were echoed in the creation of the wall. If such power still lingered, how might he harness it to sever magic from the realm entirely? He began to gather scraps of knowledge from the oldest books in Winterfell's library, old records that even Maester Luwin had never fully deciphered. Tyrion assisted with translations from Valyrian texts. Samwell Tarly had once aided in research about the White Walkers, but Sam was far to the south, serving as Grand Maester in King's Landing. Still, Tyrion teased out fragments of old legends and combined them with what Bran gleaned from the trees. Night after night, Bran drifted in and out of ancient memories, some so distant they blurred the line between truth and myth. He watched as the first men made blood pacts with the children, as ghosts danced beneath black oaks, as hearts were sacrificed to hidden spirits. Each time, he emerged breathless, feeling the weight of centuries pressing on his mind. He took notes in a shaky hand, scribbling down incantations that had no modern equivalent. At times he questioned himself. Was he going down a path that would destroy them all? He never forgot Tyrion's warning. Sometimes an attempt to save the world can break it. He remembered Sansa's caution, her face taut with fear at the mention of losing the weirwoods. He recalled the wonder in Jon's voice when he spoke of dragons, and for each doubt, he conjured the memory of the night. The White Walkers broke through the gates of that wave of the dead, unstoppable until the very last moment. He recalled the smell of burning flesh when Daenerys dragons rained fire upon King's Landing. Perhaps this was what he had to do. He told no one of his deeper progress, except for Tyrion, who aided in deciphering texts. Sansa noticed his growing distraction, but she had her own responsibilities, and he offered her vague reassurances that he was searching for ways to keep the North safe. She accepted that explanation with reluctance, though suspicion lurked in her eyes. Jon spent his days training new watchers on the northern roads, ever vigilant for trouble. As the snows deepened, the nights lengthened. In these dark hours, Bran felt the stir of power in his veins. He realized that to truly sever magic, he might need to channel it first, channel all of it, or at least a great portion. That was the nature of the children's greatest spells. They had to control something to banish it, hold it in their grasp to reshape it. So, night after night, he practiced delving deeper into the Green's Ears network, letting himself slip into the tapestry of memory. He held the ravens under his will. He listened to the old trees, and he reached out beyond, trying to find the intangible currents that fueled dragons and White Walkers alike. Sometimes he felt a presence gazing back at him, a cold, watchful gaze that reminded him too much of the Night King. Perhaps it was only the memory of that foe, an echo embedded in the magic. But every time he sensed it, he hurried back to his body, cold sweat on his brow. The cost of meddling with these forces weighed on his soul. One evening, as he emerged from a particularly harrowing trance, Tyrion knocked on his chamber door. Bran let him enter, noticing how the Lannister's face was drawn with concern. Tyrion wordlessly handed over a parchment. On it were scrawled half a dozen lines of archaic script. "These references keep appearing in the older Valyrian texts," Tyrion said. "They speak of a binding ritual, something that might unify the forces of ice and fire before expelling them. It's so old that much of it is rumor. But if it is what you're looking for..." Bran read the lines, lips moving soundlessly. The text spoke of the heart of winter and the breath of summer, joined under the Watchers of the Green, a swirl of cryptic phrases. He recognized a synergy between this and what he'd witnessed in the Weirwoods. The children of the forest might once have used a form of this ritual. "Thank you," he murmured. Tyrion pressed his lips together, hesitated, then asked, "If you do this, do you have any sense how?" Bran exhaled, feeling the heaviness in his chest. "I suspect I would have to unify both extremes, ice and fire, in one place, possibly in the heart of the Weirwood network. Then, shatter them, force them out of the realm, break their connection. That's the best way I can phrase it." Tyrion looked uneasy. "You say unify ice and fire. That suggests you'd need a White Walker. But the White Walkers are gone, are they not?" Bran stared at the parchment. "If even one survived, or if a seed of their power remains, that might suffice. Alternatively, I might need a dragon, or perhaps both." A long silence stretched as they considered the enormity of that possibility. Tyrion finally rubbed a hand over his face. "I never expected to long for simpler times when we only contended with the Mad King and petty wars. Now we speak of rewriting the fundamental rules of nature." Bran set the parchment aside. "We speak of peace, Tyrion. Lasting peace. That has never been a simple matter." Days passed. Bran meditated on the possibility that if he truly meant to break magic's hold, he might need the living embodiment of fire. A dragon. Drogon was the last known. Perhaps Daenerys herself, if the bond still existed, might be a conduit. And for ice, he prayed that no White Walker truly remained. But, if one did, he might have to face it, or harness the leftover shards of the Night King's being, if such a thing lingered. Each idea sounded more impossible than the last, but the texts insisted on a unification of both forces. He had not yet told Sansa or Jon about the specifics. He feared their reaction. But one afternoon, he found Sansa waiting for him in his solar, her arms crossed. Her expression was resolute. "Bran," she said, "I know you've been studying spells in the library. Tyrion told me enough. You're planning something dangerous." He let out a slow breath. "I'm exploring possibilities. The realm deserves a chance at lasting peace." Her jaw set. "And is this what you truly think is best? Destroying magic? Taking away all that remains of the Weirwoods, the Direwolves' bond, the dragons that might be? Nant, do we truly need dragons, Sansa?" he asked, a hint of steel in his voice. He rarely grew stern, but he felt it well up now, the weight of what he'd seen. All they bring is power and fear. "You saw King's Landing burn." She clenched her fists at her sides, struggling to keep her composure. "I did," she whispered, "but not all magic is monstrous. You have saved us more times than I can count with your visions." Melisandre's magic brought Arya the chance to strike the Night King. Even Daenerys once believed she could use her dragons for good, though it ended in tragedy. Magic can be harnessed. It does not have to be destroyed. Nay, he heard the longing in her voice for a simpler solution. But Bran had peered into the tapestry of time too often. "Doesn't it?" he asked quietly. "The cycle of violence never ends. As soon as one tyrant with dragons is slain, another emerges. As soon as the Night King is destroyed, the seeds for another might be planted by those who dabble in the dark arts. The children of the forest themselves are nearly gone. Their magic, and the havoc it birthed, should perhaps vanish with them. Now," she stepped forward, gripping the arms of his chair, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Are you saying you want to kill off the children of the forest too? Are we so eager to rid the world of all wonders?" A flicker of pain crossed his features. "I don't want any more blood on my hands, Sansa. But this might be the only way. The children themselves, those few that remain, might be longing for rest. She stared at him, searching his eyes for some trace of the brother she once knew. Finally, she spoke in a trembling voice. "Then you leave me no choice but to trust you to do the right thing. And God's help us if you're wrong." She turned on her heel and left him alone, the distant echo of her footsteps fading down the hall. Bran closed his eyes, feeling the sting of tears he rarely shed. He had asked himself that question 1,000 times. What if he was wrong? Could he live with the consequences of shattering the realm's essence? He turned back to the swirling memories in his mind. There had to be a clear sign, a reason. That night, after a sparse supper, Bran returned to the Godswood. The moon was high, silver light shining on the blanket of snow across the ground. He approached the weirwood tree, letting his hand rest upon its trunk. He sensed the silent thrum of power under the bark. The eyes carved into the wood seemed to shimmer with an inner fire. He took a deep breath, letting himself sink into that quiet place in his mind where he connected with the entire network of trees. Darkness. Then a rush of color and time, swirling memories. He saw the swirl of the cosmic forces that shaped Westeros. The forging of Valyrian steel, the birth of dragons in the fires of Valyria, the creation of the White Walkers by the children of the forest, the first men receiving the gift of the old gods. He saw how all these threads formed an infinite tapestry, each connected to the next, so that to pull one might unravel them all. In the swirl of visions, a shape emerged, a being made of equal parts flame and ice, ephemeral and terrifying. Its voice was the roar of the wind and the crackle of fire at once. It reached out an arm that shimmered between living flame and a White Walker's icy limb. Bran felt it beckon him, promising him knowledge and power. He recoiled, even as he recognized that this might be the key. To unify these forces inside himself, if such a thing was even possible, would give him the power to perform the final severance. He jolted awake, sweat on his brow, the cold night air prickling his skin. He heard a faint rustling behind him. Turning, he saw Jon standing at the edge of the Godswood, a solemn watcher. He approached, snow crunching under his boots. "Are you all right?" Jon asked quietly. Bran steadied his breathing. "I saw something, a being of ice and fire. A sign that I can do this, but it also looked like a warning." Jon's eyes were dark pools in the moonlight. "You really mean to go through with it then?" Bran nodded, feeling the gravity of that decision tighten his chest. "Unless I find a better way. But every vision suggests that the seeds of another cataclysm are already planted. Daenerys Dragon roams free. The memory of the Night King may coalesce if the right powers converge. This realm can't endure another war of that magnitude." "Menor." Jon's gaze fell to the snow. "I won't try to stop you if you think it's necessary. But be certain, Bran, be sure in your heart. Because once magic is gone, it can't be undone. The world will change, and not just in ways you intend." In the hush of the Godswood, the weirwood's carved face loomed above them, solemn and ageless. Bran felt its silent witness. Maybe it yearned to be free of the burden of memory, free of the endless pain. He looked at Jon, who carried the scars of battles fought against the dead, who had once loved a dragon queen. He wondered what it would mean for Jon to lose all that touched by magic in him. His own resurrection had been a work of sorcery, after all. Would Jon remain if magic was severed, or would the life granted by the Red Woman's prayers vanish into dust? But Jon didn't voice that fear. Perhaps he'd already accepted it, or perhaps he simply valued the realm more than his own borrowed life. The thought made Bran's heart ache. They said nothing further, both weighed down by the immensity of what lay ahead. In the coming days, Bran studied the spells more feverishly, rummaging through every scrap of text. Tyrion assisted him, but even Tyrion's jokes had dried up in the face of the enormity of this plan. Meanwhile, Sansa ruled Winterfell with a stoic grace, yet tension etched her features. Jon continued to coordinate the North Watchers. The rumors of faint roars in the night sky trickled in again, travelers swearing they'd glimpsed a black shape passing overhead in the moonlight. Could Drogon have come west once more? If so, Daenerys might be near. If the final confrontation was drawing close, it would be soon. One evening, as the wind howled outside Winterfell's great walls, Bran's door burst open, and a guardsman rushed in. "My lord," he said breathlessly, "a woman has arrived at the gates, escorted by 3 Dothraki riders. She claims to be Daenerys Targaryen." Bran felt a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the cold. He glanced at Tyrion, who was in the chamber helping him decipher a passage, and Tyrion's face blanched. Daenerys, the breaker of chains, once queen of dragons, whose destiny had burned bright and then crumbled in the ashes of King's Landing, was at their gate. "Bring her inside," Bran said, "and alert Lady Sansa." The guard bowed and hurried out. Bran exchanged a look with Tyrion. Each knew this day might come, but they had not been certain. If Daenerys had come to the north, it likely meant Drogon was near as well, the living embodiment of fire, now at Winterfell's threshold. Bran couldn't shake the feeling that events were racing toward a tipping point. He steeled himself, remembering the dream of the being made of ice and fire. He would soon face the living flame, and if rumors of stirring in the far north were true, he might yet face the lingering shards of the cold. The final act was beginning, though he had only begun to gather the knowledge he needed. His mind whirled with possibilities, with dread, with a faint spark of hope that perhaps this was the path the realm needed to truly be free. He closed the ancient tome on his desk, its pages describing half-forgotten rituals that might tear the world asunder. He gripped the arms of his wheeled chair, feeling the tension coil within him. He recalled, for a fleeting moment, the boy who only wished to climb and gaze across the ramparts of Winterfell. Never could that boy have imagined that one day he might hold the fate of magic itself in his hands. Outside, the wind rattled the windows and the night stretched on, dark and cold as the distant shadows of the north. Bran Stark, the three-eyed raven, sat in silence, prepared to face the Dragon Queen, and in time, perhaps the ghosts of ice that refused to die. Yet, in his heart, he felt a glimmer of resolve. The realm could not endure another repeat of the horrors they'd survived. If erasing magic was the key, then he would do it, even if it meant losing every wondrous thread that bound him to the ancient secrets, even if it meant forging a new and mundane world. In the corridors beyond his chamber, footsteps echoed. Daenerys Targaryen had arrived in Winterfell once more, and Bran sensed that nothing would ever be the same. So began the final quest to save the realm from the twin terrors of dragons and White Walkers by ensuring neither could ever rise again. And if that meant severing the realm from magic forever, then Bran would do what he must, no matter the price. Darkness pressed heavily against the windows as Daenerys Targaryen was led into the hall by the Winterfell guards. Torches lined the walls, throwing shifting shadows upon the stone floor. Her hair, once gleaming silver gold, was ragged from travel, and she wore a thick fur cloak of gray and black that dripped melting snow. Her features were pale but set with an unyielding resolve, a queen's air clinging to her despite all she'd lost. No dragons roared above the ramparts in that moment, but there was a hush in the atmosphere, as if Winterfell itself recognized the arrival of a power that had shaped the world. She halted a few paces inside the hall, her eyes flicking around the space she had once visited at the height of her reign. She seemed haunted by memories, dark ones perhaps, from the final days when King's Landing fell to ruin in dragonfire. Tyrion was waiting by the side, his expression unreadable. Guards stood at attention with uncertain postures, for though Daenerys had no visible retinue save for a few Dothraki, her presence radiated authority. Sansa was perched at the high table, flanked by a small cadre of northern soldiers. Jon stood near Bran, who waited in his wheeled chair. Daenerys' gaze found Bran first. Something changed in her eyes, perhaps an echo of the awe or unease she'd once felt at his uncanny presence. She lowered her head, neither a bow nor a challenge, but an acknowledgement of the uniqueness he represented. Then she turned to Sansa, whose expression was guarded, lips pressed together tightly. Sansa spoke first, in a voice that carried throughout the hall. "Daenerys Stormborn, you come to Winterfell unannounced, after many months. May I ask your purpose?" Daenerys straightened. "I come to offer my word that I mean no harm. I left Westeros after what happened, but I have roamed far and come to realize that I cannot escape my destiny, or the realm's need." She glanced toward Bran. I have felt something in the winds. It calls to Drogon, and through him, to me." Jon stepped forward, his voice low. "We've heard rumors of your dragon's presence in the north. Does that mean you brought him here?" Daenerys' eyes flicked to Jon, a complicated mix of emotions passing over her face. Longing, regret, bitterness. He circles somewhere beyond these walls. He won't harm anyone unless threatened. But winter is deepening, and I am not blind to the possibility that the North might suspect me of vengeance. I have none left to take. I only seek a chance at peace. Sansa's features remain guarded. Peace is best achieved when all parties trust one another. "Do you think we can trust you?" "Main." Daenerys took a slow breath. "I have learned the price of fire and blood. I do not wish to visit that again upon anyone. I have come seeking a path forward for myself and my dragon. If you deem it necessary to lock me away, I will submit, provided Drogon is not harmed." Her words hovered in the air. Tyrion watched the interplay nervously. Sansa kept silent for a moment, apparently measuring the sincerity in Daenerys' tone. Jon glanced to Bran, perhaps awaiting some sign of insight. Bran, however, remained still, letting the tension coil. He wished he could see into Daenerys' heart the way he saw into the minds of ravens, but people were more complex. Even he could not read her thoughts perfectly. "At last," Sansa said, "you can remain in Winterfell while we ascertain the truth of your intentions. You will not be locked away, but you will be accompanied at all times. If Drogon comes near, he must not threaten this castle or these people." Daenerys bowed her head. "I accept your terms." A strange hush followed. Then Sansa gestured to a guard to lead Daenerys to quarters that were decent enough, but well surveilled. The Dothraki, who had traveled with her, were given space in the stables and courtyard, with instructions not to roam unescorted. No one was entirely at ease, but the immediate threat seemed contained. When Daenerys had gone, Tyrion, Sansa, Jon, and Bran were left together. Tyrion let out a long, pent-up breath. "She speaks more humbly than she did in King's Landing. Perhaps time has changed her, or perhaps she's simply weary." Sansa looked unconvinced. "We can't forget what happened. If she truly seeks peace, she'll prove it. But I sense she has her own reasons for returning." "And now." Bran turned to Jon, who was staring at the doors through which Daenerys had vanished. "Jon," Bran said quietly, "will you speak with her?" Jon shifted on his feet. "She might trust me more than others given our history. But it's complicated." Tyrion's voice was gentle. "If there's a chance to avoid conflict with Drogon, we should take it. The North has seen enough destruction." Jon dipped his head. "I'll see what she wants. But be vigilant." He glanced at Bran, hesitated as if he wanted to speak of deeper matters, but the presence of guards made him hold his tongue. Instead, he left to catch up with Daenerys before she was shown to her chambers. Sansa turned to Bran. "You saw this, didn't you? That she would come?" Bran lowered his gaze. "I saw fragments that suggested she might. The dragon cannot remain in the east forever. Not when it feels the stir of something here in the north." Sansa's face darkened. "And what of your plan to end magic?" she asked softly. "Does her arrival change anything?" Bran considered. "It may be the final piece. If I need a living embodiment of fire, Drogon is that. Daenerys may be the conduit. But Sansa, I have not yet decided how or when. Be patient a little longer." She pressed her lips together, then gave a curt nod. "Don't wait too long, Bran. We can't risk the realm's safety again." She turned away, leaving him in the flickering torchlight. That night, Daenerys settled into the modest chamber assigned to her, its small window frosted over by the northern wind. Jon came to see her, slipping inside quietly, uncertain if she would welcome him. She stood by a narrow table, her cloak draped over its edge, revealing a more delicate attire beneath. A simple tunic and breeches, as if she'd shed the grand trappings of a queen. She turned when he entered, her gaze flicking over him in silence. His name hovered on her lips. She swallowed. "Jon." He nodded. "I'm glad to see you alive. I wasn't sure where you'd gone after." She looked away. "I fled west, then back across the sea. trying to find a place where neither man nor memory would haunt me. But it's impossible. The bond with Drogon is part of my soul. And as he roamed, I felt a pull. Eventually, he turned north. And so did I. No. Jon shifted, remembering how Daenerys had once believed she would save the realm. Now, the memory of fire and ash clouded his view of her. Yet seeing her standing before him, humbled, worn, evoked his old compassion. "What do you hope to find here?" he asked. She ran a hand through her hair, which was braided in a loose, haphazard style, lacking the ornate arrangement she once wore. "Redemption, perhaps. A home, if such a thing can still exist for me. I know the North despises me, and they have good cause. I know you have cause." She paused, her voice trembling. "But the alternative is to wander endlessly. I am tired of being the bringer of destruction. If there is a way to ensure Drogon will never be used for war again, I want to find it." Jon regarded her, recalling the devastations left in the dragon's wake. "You said you sense a pull. Something to do with magic. Bran has told me that magic in this world is like a tide, and it's rising or shifting. Maybe Drogon senses that too." She nodded. "Yes. I feel it in my dreams, as if the flames in his breath connect to something else. Some colder presence. It frightened me at first, but I can't ignore it." "Misty." Jon hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Bran is considering a plan to end magic entirely, Daenerys. That would mean no dragons, no whites, no prophecy, no illusions." She stilled, eyes widening. "End magic?" She looked at him with disbelief, then let out a ragged breath. "Then Drogon would die." "We don't know for certain," Jon said quietly. "But it's a possibility. The realm's magic is what fuels him. If it's cut off, he may be unable to survive, or he may transform into something else. Even Bran can't foresee it exactly." "No." She stared at the wall, her mind reeling. "So that is his solution? To rid the world of the power that gave birth to White Walkers, that gave birth to dragons?" Jon nodded. "He believes it's the only sure way to prevent another long night, or another rampage of dragonfire." Daenerys paced restlessly, her voice trembling with frustration. "I understand the desire to ensure no new war of horrors, but my dragons were my children. Even if only Drogon remains, I cannot stand by while he is destroyed." She faltered, glancing at Jon with a note of pleading. "Is there truly no other path?" Jon swallowed hard. He saw how desperate she was to hold onto the last vestige of what she once had. Bran has looked for alternatives, but nothing seems certain to break the cycle of ice and fire. He's convinced that as long as magic remains, there will always be the threat of some monstrous force. Her eyes shimmered with conflicting emotions. "I want to protect this realm truly, but not by killing Drogon, or risking the death of the very magic that once gave me hope. Does Bran not recall that magic also saved the realm, brought us together to fight the dead?" "Bendanasho." "He recalls," Jon said, "but he also remembers the cost." She turned away, her arms wrapped around herself, as if trying to hold the pieces of her life together. "Then the cost now might be Drogon's life. My life, perhaps, for what am I without the fire in my blood? But I can't let him simply cast aside my dragon as if it's a piece on a board." Jon watched her carefully. Despite everything, a flicker of sympathy stirred in him. He too had loved those dragons, once marveling at them as he soared through the skies on Rhaegal's back. "Talk to Bran," he suggested gently. "Tell him how you feel. Maybe there's a way forward he hasn't considered. But be cautious, Daenerys. If he truly believes erasing magic is the only way, he will not be easily swayed." She gave a small nod, her posture taut with resolve. "I will speak with him. One way or another, I must fight for Drogon's survival, and for the hope that magic can be guided, not destroyed." With that, Jon left her to rest, though he suspected neither of them would sleep well that night. Outside, the winds whipped across Winterfell's ramparts, a bitter song echoing through the courtyard. Winter's darkness deepened. The following day, Daenerys requested an audience with Bran. Sansa granted permission for them to meet in the warmth of the solar. where a fire blazed in the hearth. Tyrion, hovering nearby, requested to join, and Bran did not object. A guard remained at the door. Though the atmosphere was more subdued than hostile, Daenerys entered quietly, a new cloak wrapped around her, courtesy of the North's tailors. She bowed her head in a faint gesture of respect when she saw Bran. He inclined his own head in acknowledgement. Tyrion waited near the fireplace, arms folded. Bran spoke first in a calm voice. "Welcome back to Winterfell, Daenerys Targaryen." She approached slowly. "I never thought to return under these circumstances. But I'm here because I've heard of your intent to remove magic from the world." He studied her, noting the lines of weariness around her eyes. "You have spoken with Jon, then?" "I have," she said. "He believes you want to prevent another catastrophe like the Long Night or the sacking of King's Landing. I understand that desire. More than you might think. I too have seen unimaginable horrors. But I cannot stand by if you mean to destroy my dragon in the process." Bran's expression remained neutral, but a flicker of sympathy might have crossed his gaze. "Dragons are creatures woven from magic, Daenerys. That is how they were reborn from petrified eggs. If I sever magic, Drogon may not survive. I can't promise otherwise. The same might be said for the White Walkers if they still linger, or even the potential for new direwolves to be born with that special bond." "This is no small undertaking?" Her jaw tightened. "I know. But do you see no other way? Couldn't you impose some ward or boundary that prevents the rebirth of the White Walkers specifically? Or curtails the destructive potential of dragons, without eradicating them entirely?" "Now Cian," Tyrion spoke up, his voice tempered. "We've been searching ancient texts for months, Your Grace. Everything we find suggests that magic is woven into the fabric of this realm. Any attempt to surgically remove it from one corner would only delay the inevitable re-emergence. If it remains anywhere, it can grow again." Daenerys' eyes burned with a fierce light. "If it must be all or nothing, you are choosing nothing. All wonder, all possibility, gone forever, to stave off another war? Is that truly your wish?" Bran did not look away. "It is not a choice I make lightly, but I have seen echoes of future nightmares, glimpses of what could be if dragons flourish again, or if the power of ice finds another champion. The cost of letting magic remain may be unending cycles of devastation." She took a slow step forward, clasping her hands to steady her voice. "You say you've seen glimpses of the future. Have you seen what the world looks like without magic? Do you see that future? Is it truly better? Safer?" Bran was silent for several heartbeats. Tyrion watched him intently, as if he too wondered at the answer. Finally Bran said, "I have seen only fragments. A future without magic is quieter. There are fewer wonders, yes, but also fewer horrors. Men rise and fall by their wits and steal alone. The dead stay dead, the living are not burned by dragons. Perhaps that is better." Daenerys' voice trembled with conviction. "But where is the hope? In a world stripped of its greatest mysteries. Magic gave me my dragons. Magic allowed your brother Jon to return to us when he died on the wall. Magic allowed Arya to slay the Night King, if stories are to be believed. If you remove magic, you remove the realm's capacity for miracles as well." Bran regarded her, a complicated sorrow in his eyes. "Yes. Miracles and disasters often walk hand in hand." She bowed her head, warring with her emotions. "If you truly intend to do this, then I must ask you to reconsider. Can we not guide magic responsibly? If you fear my dragon might do harm, I will swear any oath you require. I will remain here in the north, if that is what it takes. Drogon will not be used for war, only for protection, if needed." Bran's expression did not shift from his measured calm. "What of your heirs, or those who come after you? What of those who might steal dragon eggs and raise them to subjugate entire kingdoms? Magic slips through oaths and good intentions. We have witnessed that time and again." "We have witnessed that time and again." Her lips parted, but no immediate answer came. Tyrion gazed down, Silent, Bran continued, gently but firmly. Daenerys, I do not do this to punish you. I do it to protect all that remains of humankind. I sympathize with your love for Drogon, but I cannot let that single bond endanger the future. Netshim. She swallowed hard. A tear glimmered in her eye, but she blinked it away. Then you mean to condemn my dragon, who has done nothing but follow me to death? Bran's gaze flicked to Tyrion, then back to her. If there were a way to spare him and still break the cycle, I would take it. I have not found one. I will keep searching, but time is short. There are whispers that the cold powers stir again in the far north. We cannot afford to wait until a new threat manifests. Nasianis. Daenerys held herself rigid, but her voice quavered. So be it. I won't stand idly by. If you move to harm Drogon, I will defend him. She paused, wrestling with the knowledge that she had few resources left. Then she added, but I will also seek any alternative path. For if I can prove to you that magic can be bound or contained without annihilation, will you not consider it? Bran inclined his head. I will consider it. Bring me proof, bring me a workable solution, and I will weigh it. Until that time we remain on our present course. Mentioned. She exhaled, tension radiating through her frame. Thank you at least for that concession. She looked to Tyrion. Help me if you can. Then she turned and left, the solar shoulders squared, determined to find a way to save the last living dragon from Bran's plan. Tyrion stared at the closed door long after she'd gone. He turned to Bran, brows knit. It's no small thing to call yourself the arbiter of magic itself. Is there truly no other way? Bran's voice was weary. If there is, it remains shrouded. We have tried to isolate the cause, to direct wards at the White Walkers alone. Yet the spells we found in the old texts speak of an all-encompassing link. Ice, fire, green, tied together. We cannot remove one thread and leave the rest. Landing. Tyrion nodded, sighing. Then we had best prepare for a conflict, not only with the ghosts of ice, but with the mother of dragons herself. Bran closed his eyes. Perhaps. But I hold on to a sliver of hope that we might find a route to peace. Nothing is certain. In the days that followed, an uneasy calm settled over Winterfell. Daenerys kept mostly to her chamber or the courtyard, flanked by northern guards. She ventured outside the gates only once to check on Drogon, who remained perched on a rocky bluff several miles from Winterfell. At first, the sight of the great black dragon in the gray winter sky struck terror among passing travelers, but he did not attack. He merely watched the horizon, occasional plumes of smoke curling from his nostrils. Daenerys returned solemnly, each time bearing new resolve to protect him. Sansa warily extended courtesy to Daenerys, ensuring she had enough food and warmth, but no more. There was no friendly bond between them. Too much history lay in ruins behind them. Jon kept his distance, unsure how to navigate the lingering complexities of his relationship with Daenerys. Tyrion oscillated between offering Daenerys quiet support and assisting Bran's research, as though torn between loyalties. Bran, for his part, spent more and more hours in the Godswood, communing with the Weirwoods, searching for glimpses of any event that might give him clarity. Then, late one afternoon, a raven arrived with news from the far north. One of Jon's scouts, a bold man who had ventured deep beyond the wall, claimed to have found strange markings in the snow, patterns reminiscent of the White Walkers. When the scout ventured farther, he and his companions heard a low rumble that echoed across an icy valley. Though they saw no living, or unliving, beings. Fearful, they hurried back. Jon read the raven's message in grim silence, then brought it to Bran. In the solar, Bran studied the parchment, feeling a cold twist in his gut. They're stirring again, he murmured. Or at least something echoes their presence. Jon nodded. I'll lead a small group north to investigate further. We can't rely on rumors alone. Bran set the raven's scroll aside. Be careful. If the White Walkers have truly re-emerged, or if some fragment of their power lingers in the ice, it might be drawn to you. Jon's eyes met Bran's. Then we need to confront it before it grows. If there's even one walker left, we must stop it. That might mean capturing it. if you still need the living embodiment of ice. A brief silence fell. Bran's voice lowered. If I can unify ice and fire in one place, perhaps the final severance can happen. But that unification might be more dangerous than anything we've attempted before. The White Walkers feed on cold hatred. The dragons channel living flame. Bringing them together could unleash destruction, unless the ritual is perfect. Then more. Joan's mouth set in a grim line. Destruction either way. Better to face it openly than to be caught unprepared. Sansa, who was standing nearby, interjected. We can't let you go alone, Jon. Take enough men to protect yourselves. Jon looked at her. We'll be cautious, but too large a party attracts attention. I'll bring only trusted fighters, wildlings who know the land, a few men from the north. We'll scout quickly and return. Dinda. Sansa reluctantly agreed. Fine. But send ravens often. We can't be left in the dark. Jon glanced at Bran again. And if we do find something, we'll bring back word. Then you can decide your next move. Bran nodded, though unease tugged at his mind. The closer they came to the confrontation of ice and fire, the more he felt a dread coiling within. He had chosen this path, yet each step felt heavier than the last. Jon departed with his small band the following dawn. Daenerys watched from a distance as they rode out. She lingered in the courtyard, absently stroking the flank of one of her Dothraki horses. When she saw Bran approaching, guided by a guard pushing his wheeled chair through the snowy yard, she stood straighter. Jon is going north, Bran remarked quietly, to search for any sign of the White Walkers. She gave a short nod. He told me last night. I offered Drogon's might, but he refused. Said it might draw more attention than necessary. Bran looked at her. He's not wrong. A dragon in the far north might provoke forces we're not ready to face, or might attract them directly to our gates. Nanusor. She gazed over the walls, the wind tugging at loose strands of her hair. Perhaps you're right. Still, I worry for him. Bran let a pause settle between them. Then he said, You should know that if Jon returns with confirmation of a White Walker's presence, we may be closer to the day when I must enact the ritual. If Drogon remains in the north, he will be a direct part of that event. I don't know if the outcome will be survivable for him. Man. She closed her eyes, inhaling sharply. I haven't given up on finding an alternative. Nor should you. Magic is more nuanced than you might believe, even with your great knowledge. He almost smiled at the gentle rebuke. You speak like someone who has lived the extremes of magic. Fire that freed slaves, fire that burned innocence. She flinched. Yes. I've witnessed the best and worst. But I still believe in the spark of hope it can bring, as well as the devastation. If only we could harness it properly. Bran turned his chair slightly, gazing at the sky. Snow drifted down, swirling in silent patterns. We keep searching, though time is short. Daenerys bowed her head and murmured, Then let us pray that Jon finds nothing in the north, that it's just a ghost story. We can afford more time to discover another path. He did not voice the doubt that lingered. He sensed something stirring beyond the wall, a whisper in the weirwood network that carried hints of cold. Still, he merely nodded, letting her cling to that shard of hope. As the days passed and Jon's absence stretched, Winterfell became a tense place. Daenerys paced like a caged animal. Sansa buried herself in affairs of state, and Bran spent hours in silent communion with the trees. He reached out with his mind, searching for any sign of Jon's party, but the swirling winter winds hindered his visions. Or perhaps some presence worked against his sight. Late one evening, Daenerys ventured alone into the Godswood. Snow lay deep, and her breath rose in puffs before her. She found Bran beneath the heart tree, eyes closed, hands resting on the arms of his chair. The carved face in the weirwood loomed like a guardian spirit behind him, its red sap eyes weeping silently. She approached, feeling a strange hush descend. Bran. His eyelids fluttered. Then he returned to himself, blinking as if from a dream. He regarded her calmly. You're troubled. She let out a soft laugh devoid of humor. I came here for answers, but the gods remain silent. And you perhaps are the closest thing to a deity we have left in this realm, at least so people whisper. Yet you don't answer prayers, do you? He studied her, a faint sadness in his gaze. I'm not a god, Daenerys. I'm a memory, a conduit. If that makes me powerful, it also makes me beholden to what I've seen. She sank onto a smooth stone by the tree's roots. Then can you see any glimpse of Jon in your visions? Are he and his men safe? Bran closed his eyes briefly. They still travel north. The storms are fierce. I sense his presence, but clarity slips away. There is a cold force that obscures my sight. It might be the White Walker's magic, or something akin to it. Her chest clenched. Then they might be walking into a trap. Bran's voice was a hushed murmur. Jon knows the risks. He's faced them before. She gazed at the heart tree, its pale bark ghostly in the moonlight. I feel so powerless waiting. It's as if everything is culminating towards some final reckoning and I'm trapped in place. He studied her face. Perhaps you can use this time to reflect. You once believed you were destined to rule the Seven Kingdoms. Now you're here in the north, fighting for your dragon's survival. She smiled bitterly. Yes, fate has a cruel sense of irony. Silence stretched, broken only by the whispering wind. Then she confessed softly. Part of me wants to flee again. Take Drogon, leave Westeros behind forever. But where would I go? If your ritual banishes magic from all corners of the world, there would be no haven left for a dragon. Bran exhaled. None. The magic that sustains him would be gone. She nodded, swallowing back tears. I never thought I'd see the day I might watch the last dragon fade from existence. But if that is truly the only way to save the realm, how do I find the strength to let it happen? Bran's expression softened. That is a question only your heart can answer. Mine leads me to the same place every time, that no half measure will suffice. The realm's safety demands a complete cure for magic's cycle of violence. Yet I do not judge you for your anguish. It is a heavy choice. Then Heather. She rose, her hands clenched at her sides. If you truly believe this is necessary, then I ask you, as a final act of mercy, find a way to spare Drogon's life, or let me die in his place. He is innocent, Bran. He should not pay for my sins or the sins of the Targaryens before me. He gazed at her, pain flickering across his features. I wish it were so simple. She bowed her head, tears slipping down her cheeks in the faint moonlight. She turned and walked away, leaving Bran alone beneath the ancient boughs. The weirwood's red leaves trembled overhead, as though it listened to the sorrow in her words. Night after night, the tension in the castle thickened. Daenerys would slip out to meet Drogon at the bluff, sometimes riding him through the gray clouds just long enough to stretch his wings, but always returning to Winterfell. The townsfolk observed the black shape in the distance, frightened but resigned. Jon did not return. Bran's attempts to scry his location grew murkier. Even Sansa's composure began to fray. If a new threat emerged in the north, how long before it reached Winterfell's gates? Then came the day when the horns sounded across the walls. A rider approached from the north, bedraggled, half-frozen. It was Tormund Giantsbane, face whipped red by ice, staggering into the courtyard with exhaustion. Jon was not with him. The soldiers rushed to help him dismount, carrying him to the great hall. Word traveled swiftly, and soon Sansa, Bran, Daenerys, and Tyrion gathered there to hear his report. Tormund clutched a flask of hot wine in shaking hands. We rode far, he began, voice rough. Found markings in the snow, spirals, patterns like the White Walkers used to leave. But no sign of the dead. Then the storms hit, fierce as I've ever seen. We lost 2 men. Jon pressed us forward, said we had to be sure. Then we found an old ruin. Some small keep collapsed in the ice. That's when it happened. Sansa leaned forward, anxiety etched into her expression. What happened? Tormund swallowed. They came out of the swirling snow, figures in white, silent. No large army, maybe 3 or 4, but they had that same terrible glow in their eyes. Jon shouted for us to form a line. We fought. He killed one with Longclaw. Another nearly took my head, but it was different, like it was testing us. Then it vanished into the storm. Bran felt a chill settle over him. So they do remain, he murmured. Enough to pose a threat. Tormund nodded grimly. Aye, or to become one if they gather their strength. Jon said he'd continue searching. He insisted I ride south to warn you. The storms were so vicious I got separated from the others. I don't know where they are now. Daenerys' heart lurched. You're saying Jon is still out there with only a few men, chasing White Walkers? Yes, Tormund said. He told me to tell you to prepare. He believes at least one walker survived, maybe more, and they might be trying to rebuild an army. Or at least biding their time, waiting for the realm to let its guard down. Sansa shot Bran a troubled look. If it's only a handful, we could send more men to reinforce Jon and destroy them. Or is that what you want, Bran? To capture one for your ritual? Bran closed his eyes, recalling the ancient spells that required both ice and fire. If there was indeed a White Walker, it might be the perfect catalyst for the final severing of magic. If we can capture one, we can unify it with Drogon's essence in a controlled ritual. That might be our chance. Daenerys' voice rose with alarm. You're saying you need Drogon's presence near an actual White Walker to break the realm's magic? That's madness. We'd be placing a dragon within reach of the very power that can freeze and kill on contact. Dumpen. Tyrion cleared his throat. It does sound extraordinarily risky. Bran kept his tone calm. I won't force anyone to help me. But if we truly wish to end this threat forever, that is the way. The spells speak of drawing the extremes together. I can use the Weirwood network as a conduit, but only if I physically bring them together. Otherwise, the cycle remains unbroken. Daenerys bristled. And what of Jon, who is already risking his life out there? Are we to let him remain lost until your ritual is ready? Nawadum. Bran shook his head. We must send a rescue party, yes, but that party must be prepared to either capture a walker or slay it. If Jon hasn't already done so, we need to join him. Sansa took a decisive breath. I'll gather men for another expedition north. We have to find Jon, no matter the risk. She looked at Daenerys. If you bring Drogon, you can't be reckless with him. The cold might use him as a target, or worse. Daenerys' jaw tightened. I'll protect him. But I can't stay behind while Jon is out there, or while this new threat emerges. Bouncer. Tormund coughed, trying to stand. Then let me lead you back. I know the way, and maybe we can track him. I just need a day or two to recover. Bran nodded, wheels of fate spinning in his mind. Gather your party. Meanwhile, I'll prepare the old spells as best I can. If you succeed in capturing a White Walker, bring it to a Weirwood Grove so I can perform the rite. That is where the realm's magic is strongest. Daenerys stared at Bran, disbelief mixed with dread. You would have me lure a White Walker into a Weirwood Grove alongside my dragon? The potential for disaster is unthinkable. Nay. Bran's eyes glinted with a strange light. Yes, it's unthinkable. Yet it might be the only path to save us all. A grim hush took hold. Tormund, still swaying on his feet, muttered, The last time we tried to capture a walker, we nearly lost our lives. Jon had once done so, an ill-fated mission beyond Eastwatch. But that was in the thick of the war. This time, the objective was even more precarious. Sansa rubbed her temples. So be it. We have no good choices. Only the least terrible ones. We can't hide in Winterfell while Jon is out there. Daenerys, you will lead your Dothraki and a contingent of northern soldiers. Tormund can guide you. Tyrion, remain here or go as you see fit. But keep me informed. Nander Bomao. Daenerys inclined her head in thanks, though apprehension shadowed her gaze. Tyrion shifted, looking at Bran. And you? Will you remain in Winterfell? Bran closed his eyes, feeling the old power stir within him. Yes. I must anchor the ritual from a place where the Weirwood's presence is strongest. The old God's Wood at Winterfell might be enough. Or perhaps another grove in the north if that's where you must bring them. Either way, I am needed to weave the final incantation. Then no. Daenerys said nothing further, only turned and left the hall, her mind clearly racing with the implications of what lay ahead. Tyrion followed, no doubt intending to press her for caution. Bran and Sansa lingered, letting the tension settle. Sansa stepped closer to Bran's chair, voice low. "I see the determination in your eyes. You truly mean to do it if the chance arises." Bran nodded, eyes heavy with the weight of centuries. "I must. Magic has brought us both wonders and nightmares. We cannot risk another apocalypse." She looked at him sadly. "And in doing this, you might lose everything that makes you who you are. The three-eyed raven, the memory of the realm." He touched her hand gently, though his own felt cold. "I was Bran Stark before I was the three-eyed raven. Perhaps I'll find my way back to that boy, or perhaps I'll vanish with the magic. Either way, I have to try." She closed her eyes, then squeezed his hand. "May the old gods guide us all." In the days that followed, preparations were made for the expedition north. Daenerys gathered her Dothraki, who had survived the war but were reduced in number. Northern soldiers volunteered, or were selected for the mission. Tormund paced anxiously, waiting for his strength to return. Sansa oversaw the logistics, sending ravens to outlying holdfasts for additional supplies. Tyrion spent hours with Daenerys, either consulting with her or trying to reassure the northern folk that the Dragon Queen would not lay waste to them. Bran, meanwhile, immersed himself in the library and the godswood, compiling every fragment of the ancient spells. He practiced weaving illusions of warmth and cold, feeling how tenuous the balance was between the two. If the day came when he stood before a living White Walker and a living dragon, he would have only one chance to draw their essences together and cast them out. If he faltered, the resulting backlash might be catastrophic. He saw glimpses in his mind of entire forests igniting, of winter storms rampaging, of the ground splitting open. This was not a gentle magic. It was the final rewriting of the realm's tapestry. On the dawn, the party was set to depart. Daenerys stood in the courtyard, clad in furs and leathers, her chin lifted. Drogon's distant roar echoed from beyond the walls, as though bidding them to hurry. Tormund hoisted himself onto a stout northern horse. Tyrion had chosen to remain behind, perhaps mindful of how vulnerable Winterfell would be if the White Walkers somehow slipped past them. Sansa watched from the ramparts, her stance regal, as if conjuring all the leadership she could muster. Before Daenerys mounted her horse, she found Bran waiting at the gate. He inclined his head in a solemn gesture. "You know what to do if you find a White Walker." She grimaced. "Capture it, bring it to the nearest weirwood grove. Hope we all don't die in the attempt." Bran's voice was quiet. "Yes. And if you see Jon, tell him." Bran paused, searching for the right words, but found none that could encompass his feelings. "Tell him the realm still needs him." Daenerys nodded, a flicker of determination in her eyes. "I will. And if I return with a White Walker, be ready." Bran looked at her with a strange mixture of compassion and resignation. "May the old gods watch over you. And the new, if they still have any power." She offered a faint, wry smile, then turned to mount her horse. In a thunder of hooves, the expedition departed Winterfell, riding north under steel-gray skies. Snow whipped at their cloaks, and the wind moaned as if mourning. Bran watched them vanish through the gates, feeling the stirring of fate. He wondered if this would be the last time a dragon soared in the skies of Westeros, or if history would repeat itself yet again. Hours bled into days as the expedition trudged north, following Tormund's half-remembered route. The land beyond the last hearth was harsh, with rolling hills crusted in snow, rivers frozen into glittering sheets. Daenerys occasionally flew Drogon for scouting runs, scanning the white horizon for any sign of Jon's party. But the storms were thick, cloud cover low, and the risk of losing sight of the ground was high. Several times, she was forced to land sooner than she wished, fearing that if she strayed too far, the rest of the company might be ambushed by something lurking in the blizzards. At campfires each night, Daenerys sat with Tormund and the northern soldiers, listening as they spoke in hushed tones about the White Walkers. Some of them had fought in the long night, but many were younger, their memories shaped by stories of horror. The tension weighed heavily, and Daenerys understood that they feared Drogon nearly as much as they feared the Walkers. She tried to reassure them that her dragon would not harm them. But trust was not easily gained. Tormund, for his part, joked loudly at times in an effort to bolster morale. "We killed the Night King once," he proclaimed. "And if we have to kill another, we'll do it with a grin." But beneath his bluster, Daenerys sensed his worry for Jon, who was still unaccounted for. Finally, in the midst of a half-frozen forest, they stumbled upon tracks. Human tracks, accompanied by a shallow grave with a makeshift cairn of stones. The men dismounted, scanning the area warily. Tormund knelt by the cairn and brushed away the snow, finding a scrap of cloth embedded with the Stark sigil. He recognized it as belonging to one of Jon's companions. He murmured a soft curse. "They've been here, but at least they had time to bury their dead. That means they survived whatever happened." Daenerys stood nearby, Drogon perched among towering pines that creaked under his weight. "Then, they might still be alive." Tormund grunted. "But we need to hurry. They can't have gone far." They pressed on, forging through the endless drifts, scanning every crest for silhouettes. That afternoon, as Daenerys flew overhead, she spotted a faint curl of smoke rising from behind a ridge. She swooped lower and saw a cluster of figures huddled around a small fire. Relief flooded her as she recognized Jon's dark hair. He and 5 other men were alive. She circled back to guide the ground party, and soon they surrounded the half-frozen group. Jon rose stiffly when he saw Daenerys approach, surprise and something else. Relief, perhaps, flickering across his face. The men embraced Tormund, who let out a booming laugh of joy. But the celebration was short-lived, for Jon's features were carved with tension. "We tracked them," he told Daenerys. "At least 2 White Walkers. We saw them vanish into a cave not far from here. But a storm battered us, and we lost 2 men. We had to withdraw." "Mesro." Daenerys nodded gravely. "Then we'll finish what you started. Show us where." Jon led them, limping slightly from an injury, but refusing to rest now that reinforcements had arrived. Daenerys walked beside him, the crunch of snow underfoot. Tension was palpable between them, so many memories unspoken, but necessity pushed aside personal matters. Together, they reached the entrance to a narrow ravine, where a half-concealed cave yawned in the icy hillside. "Inside is where we last saw them," Jon said, teeth chattering slightly from the cold. "We don't know how deep it goes. My men and I barely escaped." Daenerys studied the ravine's walls. Drogon hovered above, roaring softly, as though sensing the presence of an ancient foe. The wind gusted, and Daenerys felt a prickle of dread. Here, the cold seemed to bite deeper, almost unnatural. She remembered the fear she had felt at Hardhome, at the long night in Winterfell's courtyard. That sense of an otherworldly chill returned. Tormund clutched his axe. "We go in after them then. If we manage to capture one, can we even hold it?" "Bendam." Daenerys turned to Jon. "We have dragonglass weapons, do we not? We can weaken them if needed." Jon nodded, patting the hilt of his sword. "Longclaw is Valyrian steel, and we have dragonglass axes. But capturing one will be another matter." A plan took shape. They would form 2 teams, one to draw the White Walkers out, the other to ambush from the ravine's edges with dragonglass nets they'd crafted hastily. It was a desperate strategy, but it was the best they had. Daenerys could not bring Drogon into the narrow cave, but he could breathe fire at any who emerged. The group readied themselves, hearts pounding. The first team ventured inside. Jon, Tormund, and a handful of the bravest men. They carried torches that sputtered in the cold draft. The cave sloped downward, ice-encrusted walls shimmering in the flickering light. Every drip of water felt magnified in the silence. After descending some dozen yards, they saw a faint blue glow deeper within. Jon signaled for silence, edging forward. Tormund gripped his axe, eyes darting. Suddenly, a figure emerged from behind a jagged outcrop of ice. A gaunt shape with pale skin and eyes that burned blue. It let out a rasping hiss, lifting an icy blade. Another appeared behind it. Jon's men tensed, and the White Walkers moved with predatory grace, closing in. Jon raised Longclaw, ready. He needed to lure them out. "Back!" he shouted, stepping away. Tormund hurled a curse and retreated, torchlight flaring. The White Walkers advanced, skeletal arms brandishing lethal blades of freezing power. Jon felt the cold seeping toward him, the same chill he remembered when he first faced one at Hardhome. They backed out, forcing the creatures to follow, step by step. The White Walkers advanced, hissing in an otherworldly language. As soon as Jon's party reached the cave entrance, sunlight, albeit weak in the winter gloom, fell upon them. The White Walkers slowed a fraction, as if uncertain, but they pressed on, drawn by the living prey. That was when the ambush was sprung. Northern soldiers hurled dragonglass nets from above, the shards weaving a black lattice over the creatures. One walker shrieked as the net tore into its icy flesh, staggering. The other twisted aside with uncanny agility, swinging its blade upward. It struck one of the soldiers with a spasm of freezing force, killing him instantly. Jon lunged, hacking at the second walker with Longclaw. Sparks of frosty magic, cascaded as Valyrian steel, met the White Walker's blade. Tormund roared, bringing his axe down on the netted one, severing its arm. Icy shards exploded. The creature let out a keening wail. Jon pressed his advantage, driving Longclaw through the other's chest. It disintegrated in a burst of frosty shards, vanishing into the wind. That left the wounded one, pinned under the net, missing an arm but still writhing. Its eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence, and the ground around it began to frost over. The men circled warily, uncertain how to hold it without killing it. Daenerys approached, heart pounding. "We need it alive," she reminded them. She had a length of chain lined with dragonglass spikes. Carefully, they worked to bind the struggling walker. It shrieked, thrashing, its pale flesh smoking where the dragonglass touched. One false move, and it might free itself, but they managed to hobble it, chaining its limbs. It stared at them with a hatred beyond mortal comprehension, yet it did not melt into nothingness. It remained bound, living cold in a tortured form. They had captured a White Walker. Jon met Daenerys' gaze, chest heaving. "We have it. Now what?" She swallowed, glancing skyward. "Now we bring it to Bran, and hope we're not leading doom to our doorstep." Thus began the careful, harrowing journey back toward Winterfell. Lugging their captive White Walker in a dragonglass-laced cage, fashioned from metal and netting. Drogon circled above, uneasy at the presence of his ancient foe. Men rode with weapons drawn at all times, for the walker radiated an aura of chill that seeped into bones and hearts alike. Occasionally it rattled the cage, letting out that eerie hiss. Jon stayed close, ensuring at every stop the bindings were intact. Daenerys flew overhead to scout their route, worried that more walkers might come to free their kin. But the storm seemed to abate, and no new threat appeared. Still, the men took little comfort. They were transporting a piece of living nightmare across the frozen wastes. When at last they neared Winterfell, watchers on the walls stared wide-eyed. Word flew to Sansa and Bran that the expedition had succeeded beyond imagining. They had not only found Jon, but captured an actual White Walker. The tension inside the castle soared. Sansa ordered the courtyard cleared, and the group arrived under heavy guard. Bran came out to meet them, flanked by Tyrion. Snow fell in lazy spirals as the cage was hauled in, the White Walker glaring with luminous eyes. Bran's breath caught in his throat. He had seen these creatures in his visions, but never had one stood so close since the Night King's defeat. He felt the swirl of ancient magic pulse in its presence. Daenerys dismounted her horse and stepped aside, letting Bran approach. The walker's gaze flicked to Bran with a kind of dark recognition, as though it sensed the Green's ear's power. Bran's voice trembled with the enormity of the moment. "We must move it to the Godswood," he said. "There, the Weirwood's power can help me perform the ritual. We must bring Drogon as well." Daenerys' face was pale, but she nodded. "I'll fetch him." Jon started to speak, but she placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let me do this," she said softly. "If Drogon is to be part of this, and I should be the one to bring him in." He nodded, eyes filled with concern. She left to summon the dragon, who was waiting a short distance from the castle, restless and agitated by the walker's proximity. Meanwhile, Bran instructed the guards to carefully maneuver the cage through the gates and into the Godswood. There, in the quiet hush beneath the ancient weirwood, They placed the White Walker near the great carved trunk, layers of dragon glass still restraining it. Night was falling, the sky streaked with bruised purples and grays. Torches ringed the clearing, their light dancing on the snow. Soldiers stood at a wary distance, weapons drawn. Sansa, Tyrion, and Jon observed from behind Bran as he prepared, his mind racing with incantations. The walker hissed, glaring at them with furious eyes. Bran felt the swirl of cold power emanating from it, calling out to the darkness. Then came the roar. Drogon descended, wings unfurling like thunder. Snow whirled under the gust of his landing. Daenerys, astride him, guided him into the clearing, though the space was tight for such a creature. Drogon snarled, spotting the caged walker, as if some primal hatred stirred. Bran inhaled shakily, nerves taut. "Keep Drogon at a distance until I'm ready," he called out. Daenerys nodded, struggling to soothe the dragon with soft words in Valyrian, though he remained tense, flames smoldering behind his teeth. Bran closed his eyes, letting the presence of the weirwood flow through him. He reached into the tapestry of memory, feeling the tide of magic swirling around him. The cold aura of the walker, the fiery presence of the dragon, and the green network of the old gods. All three in one place, as the ancient spells required. He began to chant in a low, trembling voice, words older than the first men, gleaned from half-lost tablets and weirwood dreams. The air grew electric, crackling with invisible power. The soldiers shifted uneasily, while Sansa and Tyrion looked on, hearts pounding. Jon gripped his sword, uncertain what might happen. Daenerys kept her eyes locked on Drogon, preparing to rein him in if the dragon attacked prematurely. As Bran's chant deepened, the weirwood leaves rustled, though no breeze blew. The carved face on the trunk seemed to weep fresh sap, dripping red as blood. The White Walker shrieked, struggling in its cage. Frost spread across the ground in jagged lines. Drogon roared in response, smoke and sparks flickering from his jaws. A swirl of swirling energies converged in the godswood, like a storm formed of ice, fire, and something older. Bran's voice rose, echoing with unnatural resonance. The incantation pulled magic from the walker's cold heart, from Drogon's burning soul. Wisps of pale, frigid mist erupted from the walker, coiling upward. Threads of shimmering heat peeled off Drogon's scales, swirling like molten light. The energies twisted above the clearing, combining in a swirling maelstrom of opposite forces. The temperature plunged and soared by turns, causing the watchers to cry out as the air itself seemed to war between freezing and burning. Bran kept chanting, tears streaming down his cheeks from the intensity of controlling such power. He could feel the entire network of weirwood trees trembling in resonance, as if every heart tree across the land awakened to share in this moment. The swirling mass of ice and fire coalesced above them, forming a roiling sphere of crackling energy. The White Walker's shrieks grew louder, a tortured sound that rattled the minds of all present. Drogon bellowed, thrashing his tail and nearly toppling a nearby soldier. Daenerys clung to his back, voice lost in the roar. Jon shielded his eyes from the glare. Sansa stood transfixed, fear etched on her face. Tyrion gaped, mind reeling. Bran forced the final words from his mouth, each syllable resonating with the old gods. He could feel the magic collecting in that swirling sphere, a fusion of the realm's primal forces. Now was the moment to sever it, to cut the knot that bound magic to the land. In his mind, he pictured the entire tapestry unraveling. Every war, every prophecy, every miraculous birth of dragons, every forging of undead wights. He saw the threads snap, one by one, as he channeled that unstoppable swirl. He drew a deep breath and commanded, "Begone." The sphere imploded, then erupted into a shockwave of blinding light. Bran felt it pass through him, like a flame through parchment. It raced across the godswood, in an expanding ring, toppling torches, uprooting branches, slamming into the castle walls. Snow vaporized instantly where it touched. Men were thrown to the ground. Drogon roared in agony, buffeted by the blast. The White Walker's shriek cut off. Then silence fell. Bran blinked in the aftermath, ears ringing. The clearing was choked with steam, swirling in ghostly plumes. He tasted copper on his tongue and realized he'd bitten his lip. Pain lanced through his head. For a moment he couldn't see anything beyond the haze. Gradually, shapes emerged. Jon, picking himself up from the ground, eyes wide. Sansa, trembling, clinging to a bent iron fence. Tyrion, sprawled on his back, coughing. Soldiers groaning in confusion. The White Walker's cage lay twisted, empty. Nothing remained of the creature but a faint scattering of ice crystals that melted on contact with the air. The last living White Walker was gone. What of Drogon? Bran's heart pounded with dread. Through the thinning steam, he saw the dragon lying on his side, wings crumpled. Daenerys was on the ground beside him, struggling to stand. She crawled to Drogon, calling his name. There was no immediate response. Then slowly, Drogon heaved a rattling breath. Smoke curled weakly from his nostrils. Daenerys pressed a hand to his dark scales, tears streaking her face. Jon rushed to them, helping her up. Drogon blinked once, pupils dilated, body trembling as if drained of its essence. But he was alive, battered yet breathing. The wave had not disintegrated him as it did the Walker. Daenerys looked over her shoulder, tears mixing with relief and shock. Bran collapsed forward, feeling weakness roll through his limbs. He gasped, trying to sense if the magic was gone. The weirwood behind him stood silent. He felt no echo of that old presence that once thrummed through the trees, no swirling tapestry of time. His mind was blank, disconnected. The power that had once shaped him had vanished. He was just a boy again, a broken boy in a shattered world. Sansa rushed to his side, calling his name, but he barely heard. His head spun. Tyrion knelt nearby, eyes searching. "Bran, talk to us." Bran forced himself to speak. "Magic is severed." He coughed, voice nearly gone. "It's done." In the clearing, men recovered from the shock, checking each other for wounds. The White Walker was destroyed. Drogon, though weakened, remained corporeal. Daenerys knelt by him, stroking his neck with trembling hands, murmuring soft words. The dragon blinked slowly, as if uncertain of this new reality. Jon stood nearby, sword in hand, stunned by what they had witnessed. "Bran?" he called. "Is it over?" Sansa helped Bran straighten in his chair. Tears shone in her eyes. "He says it is." She brushed his hair back gently. "We must get him inside, see if he's hurt." Bran felt raw. His senses reeled. He tried to reach out with the Greenseer's sight, but there was nothing. No network of memories, no raven's eyes seeing the horizon. Silence. He was alone in his own mind for the first time since his childhood. It felt terrifying and also oddly peaceful. "Help him," Sansa ordered. Jon and Tyrion stepped forward, lifting Bran carefully. He realized his legs still felt nothing. He was still crippled, though the magic that had once shaped him was gone. Outside, the night air seemed strangely still. No whisper of old gods, no swirl of enchantment. They carried him away from the battered godswood, leaving behind the steaming wreckage of the ritual's aftermath. Daenerys remained for a moment longer, trying to coax Drogon to stand. Gradually, the dragon shifted, letting out a low rumble. His wings fluttered feebly, but when he attempted to release a jet of flame, only a trickle of smoke emerged. Alarmed, Daenerys pressed her forehead to his scales. "It's all right," she whispered, tears falling freely. "You're alive. Rest now." Mengtoati. She did not know what the future held for him, whether his fire would return, whether he would even endure in a world bereft of magic. But in that moment, she thanked every god that he breathed. When she finally followed the others inside, she felt as though the entire world had shifted on its axis. A realm without magic. A realm where White Walkers would never rise again, where dragons might fade into myth. And yet, Drogon was here. Living proof that not all was lost. Later, in a quiet chamber warmed by a single fireplace, the survivors gathered in hushed voices. Bran lay on a pallet, eyes closed, while a maester checked his pulse. Sansa hovered at his side, worry etched into her features. Tyrion stood by the hearth, trying to make sense of it all. John paced, running a hand through his hair. Daenerys watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. At length, the maester stepped back. He is exhausted but stable. I sense no wound except the strain of an unimaginable effort. Let him rest. Sansa nodded gratefully, and John led her aside to give Bran some space. Tyrion exhaled shakily. I can't feel any difference, he said quietly. It's as cold as ever, the wind is howling. How do we know magic is truly gone? John stared at the floor. The White Walker is dead, truly dead. And Bran, he can't do what he did before. If that's any indication, perhaps it's done. Daenerys closed her eyes. Drogon is weakened too. He can't breathe fire right now. Maybe that means the magic sustaining him is gone. Or mostly gone. But he is still alive. Sansa looked at her, voice soft. I know you feared you'd lose him entirely. Daenerys nodded, tears hovering behind her eyes. I did. If I have to care for him in this new world, where there is no magic to fuel his flame, I'll do it. A mortal dragon, if such a thing exists, is better than no dragon at all. They all lapsed into silence, absorbing the enormity of what had transpired. Jon gazed at Daenerys. What will you do now? She swallowed. I don't know. Drogon and I no longer belong to a destiny of fire and blood. Perhaps we never did. We can remain in the north, help rebuild. Or we might roam, find a quiet place where a dragon can live out its days in peace. She paused, eyes flicking to Bran's still form. I told him once that if there was a way not to kill Drogon, I'd cling to it. He gave me that mercy, whether by design or accident. I owe him. Tyrion offered a wan smile. It seems we all owe him. The realm is safer tonight than it has been in centuries, if no new horrors will arise. Sansa touched Jon's arm, her voice trembling with relief and sorrow. At last, we may have peace, but the cost. She glanced at Bran, whose life had been shaped by magic. Jon embraced her gently. He did what he believed was right. Let's make sure that sacrifice isn't in vain. Daenerys quietly departed, seeking Drogon to ensure he was being tended to. Tyrion left soon after, helping the guards calm the castle's inhabitants, who were still reeling from the shockwave. Sansa and Jon remained with Bran late into the night, listening to his ragged breathing, recalling the journey that led them here. The White Walkers were gone, and so it seemed was the future threat of endless winters. Yet the future itself now felt uncertain. A realm without prophecies, without the burdensome gifts of sorcery. When morning finally dawned, pale sunlight broke through leaden clouds. Bran stirred, opening his eyes to see Sansa dozing by his side. Jon slumped against a wall in restless sleep. He felt a pang of love for them, a sensation more human than he had known in years. He tried to stretch his mind out to find a raven, to see the shape of the world. But there was only silence. He was just Bran Stark again. Part of him was terrified. Part of him was strangely at peace. Sansa awoke, relief flooding her features. Bran, she whispered, taking his hand. How do you feel? He gazed at her, his voice hoarse. I'm here, I think. Just tired. She squeezed his hand gently. That's all right. Rest as long as you need. He nodded, letting his eyelids drift shut once more. For the first time, there was no swirling chaos of visions behind them. No legion of voices from the past. Only darkness, quiet and comforting. In that stillness, he found what might be a new beginning, or an end to the weight he had carried. Outside, Winterfell's courtyard filled with the subdued bustle of survivors, trying to regain a sense of normalcy. Daenerys stood with Drogon, who lay curled in the snow, steam rising from his nostrils. She stroked his scales, speaking to him in a soft, affectionate tone. He let out a low rumble, not the fierce roar of old but a gentle sound, as if echoing her grief and relief both. Jon approached, pulling his cloak tightly around him. How is he? Daenerys gave a wan smile. Weak, but alive. His flame may be gone for now, but he's still my child. Jon nodded, resting a hand on the dragon's side, feeling the slow, steady heartbeat within. For a moment, neither spoke, each coming to terms with what life might mean in this new world. At length, Daenerys broke the silence. "Thank you for coming for me in the East, all those moons ago. We shared victories and mistakes. I never thanked you properly." Jon's voice was low. "We did what we had to do. And now it seems we've done enough that the realm won't need such measures again." She exhaled, looking toward the castle walls. "Perhaps. I don't know what role I have here anymore. But I promise you, I mean no harm. If you'll allow me, I'll stay to see Bran recover. Then I'll decide where Drogon and I belong. Maybe somewhere far away, where no one will see him as a threat." "None?" Jon reached out and gently clasped her shoulder. "Stay as long as you need. Whatever happened in the past, we're all trying to move on." She gave him a grateful nod, tears reflecting in her eyes. Drogon shifted, causing them both to step aside. The dragon huffed, as if unsettled by the hush that had fallen over the land. Daenerys continued to stroke his scales, murmuring comfort. So the days turned to weeks. Bran slowly regained his strength, though the maester said his condition might always remain delicate. He no longer possessed Greenseer powers. The weirwoods still stood, but their mystical connection to him had been cut. Men who once saw illusions or performed small spells found nothing but silence. The red priests in the south, it was said, lost their fervent flames. The children of the forest, few though they were, vanished into the deep woods, perhaps finally at rest, or perhaps fading from existence. Direwolves no longer demonstrated uncanny instincts, though they remained formidable animals. And Drogon, once the fearsome symbol of Targaryen might, lingered in the north, quietly healing from the shock that had torn away much of his fiery birthright. The White Walkers were gone. No more shrieks in the night, no more threat of an endless winter. Peace settled over the land, albeit a bittersweet peace. Sansa governed the north, forging alliances with distant regions that had also felt the waves of change. The lords realized that an age had ended. Some grieved for lost wonders. Others celebrated freedom from ancient terrors. In the Godswood, now a place of simpler reverence, Bran occasionally sat in quiet contemplation. He felt the bark of the weirwood under his fingers, no longer hearing any whispered voices. He was, in many ways, unburdened. He saw the world through mortal eyes alone. The old illusions burned away, and that was all right. He had done what he believed necessary, and for better or worse, the realm would no longer be trapped in the cycle of ice and fire. Daenerys would often join him there, pacing slowly amid the fallen leaves. She still had the regal bearing of a queen, but humility tempered it. Sometimes she spoke of departing, but the days passed and she lingered. Drogon remained nearby, adjusting to life without the fierce flames. He could still fly, albeit more slowly, and found some small measure of comfort in Daenerys' presence. There were moments when Bran wondered if, in time, the dragon's fire might rekindle in some faint capacity, though not by magic, simply by the natural means of a once mystical creature adapting. It was a question that time alone would answer. One afternoon, as the sun hung low over Winterfell's walls, Daenerys approached Bran, offering him a small smile. "You look stronger." He nodded. "I feel stronger." She sank onto a bench opposite him, folding her hands in her lap. "I don't know if words can suffice, but thank you. You let Drogon live, even after all that's happened." "I know it wasn't guaranteed." He studied her face. "I did only what the ritual required. The rest was fate or luck, or perhaps mercy, perhaps all three." She looked away, tears pricking her eyes. "Even so, I'm grateful. I know you believe what you did was right. And maybe it was. The realm is safe from magic's worst excesses now. We'll all live with the consequences, but at least we can live." He let the silence stretch, then said softly, "I once saw you as the unstoppable mother of dragons, someone who would change the world by fire. Now, you live in a world without that fire's magic. Yet here you are, alive, forging a new path." A faint tremor passed through her lips, almost a smile. "Perhaps that's all any of us can do, find a new path when the old one crumbles." Snow began drifting down, soft flakes settling on the Godswood floor. Bran watched them melt on the back of his hand. No cosmic significance, Just water crystallized in the cold air. He let out a breath and felt it swirl away. In the distance, Jon was returning from patrolling the nearby roads, ensuring that no sign of old threats lingered. Sansa was meeting with lords in the Great Hall, shaping the political future of the North. Tyrion was in the library, reorganizing records in an effort to preserve knowledge for future generations, knowledge now free of magical illusions. And all around them, life went on. Children laughed in the courtyards, blacksmiths hammered steel, farmers prepared for next year's harvest. A new dawn, unmarked by prophecy, untainted by the specter of dragons or the dead. Bran turned his gaze upward, watching the final golden rays of the sun pierce through skeletal branches. In the hush of the moment, he let himself be simply Bran Stark, a survivor who had once flown through time and memory. He felt an odd kinship with Daenerys, a queen who had lost her dragon's flame but found a quiet redemption in the North. Both of them had been shaped by magic, and both now dwelled in a world cleansed of it. They sat there together, not as enemies, nor truly as friends, but as two souls who understood sacrifice. The snow fell gently, blanketing the old scars, and in that stillness, a fragile peace took root, one they both prayed would endure for generations to come.